Okay, I don't see anyone coming in the lobby. So again, good morning, everyone. I am Dragos Paraskiv. I will complete this presentation today for us to do a tour of a number of features in the RETScreen expert platform, focused on two particular type of facilities: food services, food retail, and services sector. I kind of included here a little bit of a presentation, but most of the time we'll spend on actual applications using RETScreen. The time allowed for this presentation is about 1.5 hours, but I will open the floor for questions at the end. Feel free to post questions in the chat or raise your hand, enable your microphone. We don't have a very large group of people, so we should be able to interact. The 4 topics listed in the agenda will take us through probably about 1 hour of the time we have. And then, as I said, we'll have time to discuss any questions, any particular aspects of RETScreen applied to the food services, food retail sectors. The 3 topics that will be covered today in a little bit more detail with the examples using RETScreen software are the performance analysis. Many organizations use various platforms for utility bill management. RETScreen is one of them, and we'll see how we can actually tie the performance analysis within an utility bill management system. The second feature that was added quite a while ago to RETScreen and is growing with every single version of the software released by the RETScreen team is the virtual energy analyzer, using a variety of archetypes for different buildings. And we'll have a chance to review in more detail one today, food retail archetype, with a feasibility analysis of potential energy efficiency measures, renewable energy measures, clean measures that can be implemented in our buildings. And lastly, the feature at the end of this presentation would be how we can actually assemble a number of facilities we have in our portfolio. And RETScreen now includes this portfolio analysis, which allows, as I said, to aggregate data from a variety of facilities that can be grouped, sorted, aggregated, presented for various stakeholders in our organization. And the most recent tool added to the platform is the decarbonization framework, the net zero planning tool that we can now integrate with our portfolio analysis. So these are the 3 main components. And before we get into actually, just in case anyone is newer with RETScreen or you'd like to see an overview, we'll go very quickly over a few slides that present the RETScreen software platform. And it's been a long time since RETScreen started. More than 20 years it's been in the market, evolving from just a renewable energy tool to the sophisticated platform for support in making decisions related to clean energy, renewable energy, as well as energy efficiency in a variety of buildings. It includes the full feasibility analysis beyond just the technical components, but has also a very powerful financial analysis tool for our buildings and our projects. Been used around the world. There are teams that translate the software in for various locations. It's offered in several languages with various units of measurement, conversion factors, everything that can make adaptation of the platform for local particular aspects of your projects much easier. And in the platform, we basically have modules that cover everything related to energy management, from using an archetype to get your project started, through the virtual energy analyzer, and this database of archetypes is growing continuously with new project, new type of buildings added. Benchmarking, which is an important element of starting our analysis, basically comparing the performance of our building with other buildings, similar buildings, or maybe historical consumption in our same facility. That is embedded into the platform. RETScreen has a wide range of sources, third-party verified sources for benchmarking against similar facilities. The feasibility analysis is the module in RETScreen that allows us to, from modeling the energy consumption end uses of energy consumption in the building, identify potential savings, calculate savings, and then add cost analysis, emission analysis, financial analysis, as well as sensitivity and risk analysis to our potential project. So it's a feasibility analysis tool that is meant to help in a decision-making process. Performance analysis is added to our projects when we want to confirm, measure, verify savings, or monitor and target savings in the future. So these are the type of features that we add to our projects once an energy efficiency or a renewable energy project is complete. We want to see if we actually get the results. So the performance analysis module will allow us to do that. And lastly, the portfolio analysis that I already introduced, which allows us to aggregate buildings across multiple facilities. Just think about the school board, or think about a grocery company, a food retail company that has facilities across Canada. So that portfolio analysis will allow aggregation and comparison analysis, benchmarking, feasibility, as well as performance for facilities across larger areas. We'll start with the performance analysis, and on a cover page of this presentation, you've seen this pictogram, the process that's associated with energy management in our facilities. We'll start with the performance analysis because, in my experience, this is the step where most buildings get the energy management process started. And on the diagram here, we see it labeled in orange. It relies on data. It adds analytics, statistics, calculations that will allow us to identify trends and verify this performance, and then finally reporting on the results. So why I'm seeing this as being the starting point is because in many organizations, let's say an energy manager gets involved in the performance of that facility. The starting point is basically to get a stack of bills and then find opportunities. So this is the performance analysis. So in this performance analysis module, we are able to monitor, analyze, and report on key performance related to energy. So we get utility bills and we convert them into useful directions for the building, useful key performance indicator for comparison with other facilities. And in the larger platform of energy management with RETScreen, we can provide the support for a monitoring and targeting strategy, which is the basis of the energy management in general. But we can also be very specific for particular projects, energy efficiency or renewable energy projects, to do the measurement and verification process. And last one on the list here, but not the least important one, as I said, many organizations use various platforms for utility bill management, energy tracking. We can embed that with the data of RETScreen. So we can basically implement this for facilities across the globe. We have access to data for corrections of for adjustment of our utility consumption, so that we can compare in similar conditions our facilities. I mentioned the utility bill management function that can be performed with RETScreen, and in this chart here you see we have a tabular format of collecting data from utility bills. We can do this for all forms of utilities in the building, energy bills for natural gas, for electricity, for district energy. Even water is covered here, so any form of input would be modeled here, and data is recorded according to the record. So in this case, we see gas bills being input on a monthly basis, which is the typical bill cycle for many utilities. So having this data available allows us to get the process started. And for example, for natural gas, as shown in this example here, one factor of influence of natural gas consumption in colder climates is heating degree days. The colder the weather, the more natural gas I need to condition the space. And I can correlate the two here by getting heating degree days corresponding for the same period of my utility bill. And once we have that, we can look at the relationship between various parameters. So energy consumption, a function of some other parameters. And that's what we can analyze in RETScreen. So climates which see seasonal variation of temperatures usually need climate data, weather data. For performance analysis, we need the weather data, and we can use various sources. Very easy to use. It's a source of data for weather, which is embedded into RETScreen. So RETScreen has a direct link to NASA servers, and we can download the data for the particular location of our project from NASA servers. We can use other factors of influence like production, occupancy. Let's say if we do an evaluation of a renewable energy project, we can use the solar radiation as an input parameter for the production of our PV system. And as I said, on the dependent variable, the consumption or production, we can use a variety of inputs here, not just the energy as per se, natural gas and electricity, but we can use water, for example. Now, once we process this data, if we have, and that's example, this example here is very relevant for understanding the process of measurement and verification of an energy efficiency project or renewable energy project. So once we have this utility data, which is on this timeline presented with the monthly consumption in blue up to the point where we implement our project. It might be a little bit of a commissioning period that we can leave from the project baseline end to when we start the savings. Typically, we want this baseline to be prior to the project, the closest period prior to the project, to represent how the energy consumption was used in the building before we actually implemented our project. After the project is implemented, we continue to monitor consumption. This would be the green line, the green dots presented on this chart. And just visually, we see that the green line after the project is complete is somehow below the blue line. But comparison of direct numbers prior and after the project is complete is not as easy as it seems, because other factors may impact our consumption. For that reason, we need to come up with an adjusted baseline consumption, which is this blue line, which represent which represents what the energy consumption of the facility would have been without my project being implemented. And since this is an energy efficiency project, the energy consumption in this facility would have been higher without my project being implemented. And therefore, we now identify the savings as being this area highlighted in green in this chart here. So this is kind of, 2-minute summary, the measurement and verification concepts that the RETScreen platform can support very, very efficiently now with all the statistical tools that can give us the uncertainty, the error, the probability of reaching this number here as saving. So for a period of about 4 years, we saved 2,618 gigajoule of energy in this example here. So what we basically do with RETScreen, we predict that energy consumption using the statistical tools. We base that on historical data. We get this historical data from bills. And with the historical data, we develop these statistical models that will predict the energy consumption we use for calculating savings in the future after the project is complete. With the data, we can also use key performance indicators for reference, but we need to be careful with these key performance indicators. Aggregating data can hide many of the aspects related to patterns of consumption or various end uses. For example, for natural gas consumption, we know we have seasonal loads, which are for space heating related to outdoor air temperature, but we also have a base load, which should be, let's say, related to cooking or domestic hot water consumption in the facility. And the key performance indicator may hide this seasonal versus base load type of consumption. So it's important to do the analysis and select these key performance indicators properly. In the industry, we see more and more of simulation models. These are energy consumption calculations based on a variety of inputs. Energy modeling supports now various projects, new construction as well, because we have code requirements for buildings in terms of energy efficiency. We use simulation models to show that our building is performing as intended and is better than that reference building. So these simulation models, if they exist, we can embed them into our calculations. But with RETScreen, the beauty of the software is that we can also build the energy model within RETScreen, and I'll show that to you in the feasibility analysis component. So the baseline that we develop here is the reference that we want to use for comparing energy consumption before and after the project. Typically, we look at annual consumption whenever we have weather in our list of factors of influence because of the seasonal cycle. So you want to cover an entire cycle of operations of the facility. Typically, we want to exclude periods where we have unplanned changes or some form of anomalies that will influence the way we calculate savings. We do not exclude them just because we don't like the data. We try to explain that. We want to have a record, and because most facilities are quite dynamic in terms of usage, we want to look at some form of recent data when the memory is still fresh, and we can actually find those explanations. Together with this RETScreen platform for performance analysis, beyond the baseline, which is developed based on a regression analysis, the statistical model, we use also cumulative sum. A cumulative sum allows us to track on a longer period of time the evolution of our performance. We want to see the project maintaining the savings and continue to accumulate this savings. So we use this function to track the type of performance along the time. And it's an excellent tool to find or identify deviations from the expected performance. So we used cumulative sum to find these deviations and then try to correct them or explain at least these deviations. In a graphical format, using the baseline for an example here, it shows that for this project, we started to accumulate savings, and it seems on this chart that the savings are fairly consistent over a long period of time. So this project would show basically that we keep the performance that we intended for the project. And to summarize this, here we have a process that basically starts from analyzing the data and ends up with the analysis that is based on findings from the regression analysis and the cumulative sum that will allow us to identify changes. So that being said, we are now at a point where we are going to do our first demonstration. So I'll switch on from the PowerPoint presentation to RETScreen. I'm going to use a RETScreen example of a project in a Toronto area location. So for this project, we have a grocery store. We have certain size of the store, typical for our market here. The first step in using RETScreen to support our decisions in energy management is to a little bit of a benchmark. In this case, we are using the benchmark of RETScreen analyzed facilities, so typical superstores in North America. We have this benchmark set at 58.62. And if we get our annual consumption, we can see where we are compared with the benchmark. If you are above or below, we can see opportunity. So for this example here, our store that we use in this archetype in RETScreen has an 89.3 kilowatt hour per square foot consumption. So it's higher than the benchmark. We kind of identify that we have some opportunity for savings because most stores are more efficient than this store here. We can actually set for a quick analysis that the target that we want to achieve. Let's be aggressive here. So let's say we want a net zero energy use target. And that means that we basically have to find ways to reduce the consumption that will take this 89.3 kilowatt hour per square foot to zero. So that's what we set up in this project. We wanted to look at where the store is and how does it perform over time. So for that reason, we got a stack of bills. We have bills for electricity and natural gas as well as water. I'm going to focus today on electricity and natural gas, just to show you how we can use the data to identify some stories and quantify the performance or the results of a number of projects implemented here. The energy management team usually keeps track of factors of influence, events. In this case, for this facility, we identified a number of events. A lighting retrofit, very popular in buildings with long hours of operation, especially now that we have LED technology. This project was completed in 2019. We have a water retrofit that was completed in 2021. Again, we are not going to analyze water today. But then we also have some other operational changes that have an impact on energy consumption. As an example here, we look at the conversion of cooking equipment from natural gas to electricity. Some additional lighting that was required for operational purposes, different stands, different merchandise, different organization of the store. So all these events will have an impact on energy consumption. And what we want now is to identify that impact, quantify it so that we can have an input into the decision-making process. For that, we use analytics. And in the analytics, we basically start with the graphical analysis of the data. We have quite long data set, quite a long interval for data from 2015 onwards. Graphically, we see that consumption changes over time. It's also with a little bit of a summer peak, but has a rather large base load, and that's no surprise in a grocery store because of refrigeration equipment that operates year round. We expect that large base load. We are looking at natural gas consumption as well. We see what we would have expected anyway. Weather dependency, consumption over the summer being lower. There is that base load versus seasonal load that I mentioned for cooking, maybe hot water consumption. And what we use here is a regression analysis to identify the reference period of time and then changes that happen over the time. So for electricity, I'm going to start with electricity because in terms of consumption in grocery store, electricity is the most relevant one, most significant one, cost-wise as well. So for electricity, using the first year of data that we have, 2015, we see that we have a fairly good correlation of electricity consumption with the heating degree days and cooling degree days. So cooling degree days and heating degree, both of them have an impact on the energy use in this facility. And the regression analysis is fairly high. We are looking at least 70% as a correlation between these factors of influence and the electricity consumption. So in this case, we get almost 90.9, which is a very good correlation for this facility. I said that, cumulative sum is the tool that helps us identify stories, events, and we see it very well represented here as well. So using that 2015 as a reference, we see that over the time we notice here reduction in energy consumption that cumulates to a significant total savings over this long period of time. So we would like to understand where these changes in consumption happen. So that will mean that if we add here the event tracker, remember we identify a number of events that happen in this facility. If I add these events here, we can see that there was a lighting project, and right away the slope of this curve changed. We can see it here much steeper, so savings accumulates much faster after the lighting retrofit was implemented. Water, again, no change for electricity. That's a different regression analysis. And then somewhere in the recent period of time, we saw an upgrade of the lighting system, adding more lights, as well as that conversion of the equipment, the cooking area. So what we would like to know is what the impact of lighting retrofits are in this facility and what the impact of the pizza oven conversion and the new additional lighting would be of this event here. So we basically create another regression analysis that we label here to be lighting. This regression analysis is based on a 1-year period before the project was implemented, before the lighting retrofit was implemented. We see again a reasonably good regression analysis, and cumulative sum will show that starting after the project was implemented, we accumulate savings. So these savings here we now know are related to the lighting project, and typically we want to verify this for 1 year, so we can look at 1 year of savings to see the impact of the lighting project in this facility. Or we can even better use this feature in RETScreen that creates a measurement and verification chart. So this measurement and verification, as we see it in this example here, allows us to define also a commissioning date. Sometimes projects are fairly complex. It takes quite a while to implement them. It may be required in a contract with the service provider, with the lighting contractor or the energy services provider, to define the moment in time when you want to start accumulating savings for this project. And this is what we define here with a commissioning date. So we know the project ended somewhere around mid-September. We say, no, the commissioning date is actually end of September, and we want to accumulate savings starting on October 1st in 2019. And from October 1st, 2019 till end of February 2024, we accumulated 970,000 kilowatt hours of electricity. And again, this is with a fairly high precision of calculation. The accuracy of this number is quite acceptable in energy management, because we had the regression analysis developed with a good statistical model. That regression analysis had, if I go back to regression analysis, had a 0.88, 0.9 roughly R-square value. There are other parameters for regression analysis. Is definitely a separate discussion altogether for those of you that are interested in measurement and verification. The second event that we wanted to identify was the oven conversion in a more recent period of time. So again, we develop a regression analysis that starts 1 year prior to the conversion, the cooking equipment conversion project. We again see a reasonably good correlation, 0.9 R-square value. So this correlation is higher than the 0.7, which is kind of what the industry is accepting. And with this, we can define, using that reference, the baseline, we can define now the cumulative sum. And as expected, because we converted natural gas cooking equipment to electricity, we see an increase in the electricity consumption for this project. So we have to be aware of the impact on electricity consumption. That's what we see after the project was complete. And because we also expect to get natural gas savings, we created the natural gas regression analysis here. We are looking at the same period of time, 1 year prior to the conversion of the oven project, and consumption is expected to drop, and that's exactly what our chart shows here. So we are reducing the energy consumption on the natural gas side, but you have increased that natural consumption in the electricity side. And we need to be aware of this aspect so that we can have, from the facility operator, facility owner perspective, the full impact of the project. Measurement verification as well will allow us to track the savings, and from the project completion, we saved 19,379 cubic meters of natural gas. And if we compare that with measurement and verification for the electricity, we used an excess of we used an extra 96,000 kilowatt hours. The comparison between the two will give us the true impact of this project in the facility. So this is, as a quick summary, an overview of how we actually start from bills that are stored in a tabular format. We can import them from Excel files. We can import them from a large number of sources of data that are now available in many companies, and convert this bill data into a useful source for our analysis of the performance. So I have here electricity consumption as the data comes from the bills. We have natural gas consumption as the data comes from the bills, with a bill period consumption that will allow us, as I said, to move on to the analytics. So that basically wraps up the demonstration for the first feature that I want to focus on, which was the performance analysis, which I find being the starting point in many energy managers' work. The next feature that we'll cover is the virtual energy analyzer, which includes a number of archetypes. And with these archetypes, we are going to review the feasibility analysis. And on the chart here, which you'll see on the welcome screen of RETScreen, this represents here the bottom half of the process. So we basically start with energy consumption modeling, the end uses. We add the cost analysis for potential projects. Based on the energy savings, we can determine savings in emissions as well. We have a robust, sophisticated financial analysis to support the decision-making process. And then in the end, we can do also a risk analysis, sensitivity and risk analysis, because whenever we predict this in the future, we need to identify a potential for changes that can have an impact on results of our project. So all these are part of the feasibility analysis. And I'll start this with a little bit of a description of the virtual energy analyzer, which allows us to use a certain building. All these virtual energy analyzers are based on actual projects, actual buildings, which were shared with the RETScreen team, made anonymous, so we can actually use the data without necessarily being able to connect to an actual facility. But they are based on true project data, so we have at least the confidence that someone implemented those measures and obtained these results. So with the energy analyzer, with the virtual energy analyzer, we can compare various options we have in our facility. We can add them or modify them, select or deselect various measures that will give us a quick understanding of the project without necessarily being required to build or visit that particular facility. So we use archetypes that were developed by real projects. RETScreen has a scale of showing how accurate these archetypes are. Most of them will be in a 5-star rating. So basically, they have all the data available. I'll show you how that's presented in the next screen. So this database of archetypes is growing, and I encourage you to use them as a source of inspiration. First time I noticed this feature in RETScreen, I thought that my work is going to be completely replaced by the virtual analyzer, because I can just get this model, change a couple of parameters, and everything will be done for me. But this is not exactly right. This is, keep in mind, not your building, it's someone else's building. It's very similar and can use it as a source of inspiration, but to modify it and make it our building is not as easy as it seems. So now my advice is that you should keep 2 files open, 2 RETScreen files. One will be the virtual analyzer for a similar building with an archetype, and the second file would be the actual building you are working on, and try to develop that from scratch rather than modifying an archetype. I mentioned that virtual analyzers are rated by the quality of them. Most of them will be in a 5-star category here, which means that for the project that was provided to the RETScreen team to build this archetype, all this data was available. I mean, climate data, we know for sure that we can get that. It's part of a partnership that RETScreen has with NASA. We have access to that data, or you can use your own data. We have benchmark data now for a tremendous large number of facility types that's embedded into RETScreen. But then if you look at the particular project, archetypes that share data for the base case, this would be the end uses before the project is used, short share data for the proposed case. Basically, this is the energy end use calculations for the proposed project after, for the proposed measures being implemented. And lastly, for the 5th star in this rating, if projects were provided with a cost associated with the implementation for that particular financial analysis, they get the 5-star. And a good thing is that in the food retail and food services sector, we do have archetypes, and that's going to be part of the demonstration. But before we get to the demonstration, I just want to focus a little bit about the methodology and a model behind the RETScreen feasibility analysis module. We rely on an energy modeling of the building that identifies the end uses, so that if we change parameters, we see what the impact is of on the end use analysis. And one of the most sophisticated models in RETScreen is the building envelope, and that's what this chart shows here. It shows that in RETScreen we are calculating all these flows of energy, transfers of energy throughout the building envelope. I won't go into the details of them here, but I just want to point out the complexity of this model because it's important to be accurate in the inputs so that the calculation of these end uses is also accurate. So whatever takeoffs we get, the size of the windows, the R value of the walls, the infiltration rate, any of these parameters would have an impact on the calculation. So we try to make sure that we have the proper inputs in the model so that we rely on the outputs to be correct. Because in any type of energy modeling, whenever we have a black box, it's garbage in, garbage out. So if we make an error in the inputs, obviously that will be translated into an error of the outputs. Also, just to think about the approach, the methodology of addressing energy efficiency in our buildings, we typically focus on understanding how the building uses energy. We look at the type of fuels and schedules. This would be the parameters that energy modeling in RETScreen use. We look at the efficiency of equipment. Whenever we have conversion of energy, for example, in a furnace or in a boiler, this is part of our analysis because we can see opportunities there. But all this is because we want to identify the end uses. So the end uses that are the components of energy used in the building that are the most representative will be modeled as part of the energy model. And once we have these end uses identified and accounted for, we can then look at opportunities. So the bottom row of this chart shows the opportunities, and the starting point in identifying opportunities is in looking at, is there any opportunity to reduce the end use by avoiding the waste? We do not necessarily want to reduce the end use by providing lower service. So, we can get savings by reducing the set point in our buildings to 10 degrees Celsius, but that will not be a comfortable environment for the occupants during the winter. So the savings that we look here from avoiding this use in the end use range is only by identifying waste. For example, if you have the same set point in a facility during the unoccupied hours, you waste energy. You would be able to save energy by scheduling the set point accordingly. The second, once you identify these end uses, savings, the second category of measures is improving efficiency. So if we reduce the end uses as much as we can, providing, again, the level of service expected by the building occupants, the next category of savings would come from improving the efficiency of our equipment. So if we know that we have to heat the space, can we do that with a more efficient equipment? Can we do that with a higher efficiency furnace, a condensing furnace, or can we actually switch to an air source heat pump, for example? And finally, the last piece, after we reduce the end uses and we improve the efficiency of our equipment in the building, we can look at optimized energy, which is basically on-site energy generation. So we can have solar water heating in the building, in the project, to replace fossil fuel-based heating, or we can have a PV system to replace the import of energy from the grid. So the reason for this approach here, and you see the arrow is pointed from right to left on the bottom of the screen, is because economically the financial feasibility of the project increase in this category here. So end uses tend to be the most cost-effective measures, reduction of end uses, basically avoiding waste. Moving on to improving efficiency, that seems to be the next category in terms of financial feasibility. And on-site generation tends to be the most expensive one, typically for our project. So basically, as a colleague of mine from many years ago at the City of Toronto used to say, conservation before generation. So let's keep that in mind in our approach as well. So in the feasibility analysis, we model the clean energy projects, and we incorporate them into our building energy end use. So it is a 5-step process I mentioned before, with the energy analysis, the cost analysis on top of it, then defining the emissions associated with these projects, and financial analysis to support the decisions, as we also do with the sensitivity analysis and risk analysis. It is a fully integrated module with the benchmarking and the performance analysis. It has a number of databases. For those of you that will download RETScreen or have used RETScreen, you notice that is a tremendous amount of information that comes within the software package. Databases for products, for climate, for example, so cost databases, performance for various products, various equipment items. Over the time, the database of examples, case studies, and templates for various projects in the clean energy field, renewable energy and energy efficiency, increased with every version of the software. So just going into a little bit of a description before we go to RETScreen. I just want to show this screen without my intent being to scare anyone, but it is a complex graphical user interface. It has a lot of information, and we are going to try to analyze this graphical user interface in the perspective of a certain project that was proposed in this archetype. RETScreen also allows us to present the data in a friendlier way, so we can build our own dashboards with graphical data that is much easier to interpret or export then and use in reports. Could be periodically issue reports by your organization for various stakeholders in your organization as well. So the tool is developed to have the access to the detailed data, but also aggregate into a much friendlier way, as shown in this chart here. So what we are going to do next is to use the RETScreen Virtual Analyzer to look at an example of a food retail store. It's an archetype that's available to anyone that installs the software. And we are going to use it as an example for our discussion. So for that, I'm going to go back to my RETScreen, and I'm going to use a file that is, again, a store located in Toronto, Ontario. It's a grocery store that has an archetype which included savings to around 30–40% target. So this store, and if we want to use the similar units of measurement, it's another excellent feature in RETScreen. changing one input automatically translates in recalculating all other fields in RETScreen. So same size, around 40,000 square feet, typical grocery store, benchmark of 61.32, and the base case was in this case around 53.67, so slightly less than the average of the stores in North America, but with still a good opportunity for improving, because the most efficient grocery stores in North America have a consumption of 18.02 kilowatt hours per square foot. So the target in this case was aiming for 30–40%, and we used the feasibility analysis for identifying ways to get to our target. So for that reason, in the project here, we built an energy model. This is basically calculating the end uses by system category. We have the building envelope, we have the ventilation, lighting, electrical equipment, hot water, fans, process, heat recovery. That's a measure that we implement as savings. We identify this in grocery stores, and the consumption for process equipment, which is modeled separately here for the refrigeration plant in the grocery store. As proposed measure, we also analyzed a PV system, a 158 kilowatt system that can fit in this facility here. So if I look at what we show here, we can identify the base fuel consumption for base case. This is using the existing systems. So it's based on an energy audit, based on looking at the drawings, and this energy consumption can be compared with bills. Now, this, as I introduced the example to you, is just based on the archetype. So I did not have an actual billing I wanted to compare with, so I don't have that data here. But if this is your store, you would have the historical data that you use as a reference. And the purpose of this input here is to make sure that the model is reasonably calibrated. Just as a rule of thumb, if you aim for plus minus 10%, would be an acceptable starting point. For more detailed analysis, measurement and verification protocols have methodologies to define what's that acceptable error for, what's the acceptable variance for the energy model. So in this case here, just to show you, let's assume that our bills show 65,000 kilowatt hours of cubic meters of natural gas consumption per year, and we have 1,700,000 kilowatt hours of electricity. Again, these numbers come from our bill analysis. So from the energy consumption we see on utility bills, and we see that we are within that plus minus 10% target that we're aiming. As natural gas consumption seen here, 63,801 cubic meters of natural gas, which is what the model calculates, is reduced by a variety of measures to 7,600 cubic meters, and electricity consumption is reduced from 1.7 to 1 million kilowatt hours. Now, how do we get to these numbers? Well, in the energy model, we have the end uses that are presented for this particular building envelope, ventilation, lights, and so on. And we see that by modeling the proposed case to be different than the base case, we can identify opportunities for saving. So, for example, in the lighting category, this is the general sales area, the supermarket area. if we reduce the consumption because we are using more efficient LED lighting instead of the fluorescent T8 lighting, we get savings from 300,000 kilowatt hours to 168,000 kilowatt hours. And other measures that are included here, we can identify them based on their savings. Now, the archetype, because I said that this is a good tool to use, the archetype also has at the end of the form in notes has a brief description of the measures that were implemented here. So as I said, use this as a source of inspiration. For example, in the building envelope category, the project included additional blinds to prevent solar heat gain, loading dock upgrades to improve air infiltration, and probably insulation of the doors as well. So these type of measures are a source of inspiration that we can use in our project, and that's how best we can use this store. So if you have a store that's located not in Toronto, but let's say in Ottawa, the easiest would be to change the location. So I just select the location in Ottawa. And by the way, this tool is actually based on a big mapping tool. So any feature that you have in mapping tool is available here, like satellite view, address search, location, zoom in, zoom out. So all these are available. I'm just going to select Ottawa as a generic location, not for a particular address. And right away, RETScreen is going to select the closest database for climate and weather data. So the climate data is already available. You see it at the bottom of this form. So as soon as I accept this location, everything will be recalculated according to the new location. And that's now relocated. So my archetype project is taken from Toronto and relocated in Ottawa. So I can repeat that analysis for this new location and look at the opportunities for savings in that case. Whenever climate was a function of the savings, we will see that change here. So for lights, for example, we won't see that because the lighting hours operation stayed unchanged. So the same number that we saw for Toronto would be here, but for the building envelope, that will change because you have different climate data in Ottawa versus Ontario. If we go further, I'll skip the cost analysis here. It's not implemented, but this is where you can add, for example, feasibility study costs or any other cost that was not associated directly with a measure. If we go to emissions, we have the flexibility of selecting the emission factor for electricity. There is a database already included in RETScreen. So once you select the province in Ontario, based on the location, we have an emission factor of 0.025 kilograms of CO2 per kilowatt hour. This is, again, the grid electricity associated emission factor. And you have the flexibility to change it if you have better data or more accurate data. You can also move on to a more detailed way to input the data. But the purpose of this is to quantify the emission savings based on the measures that we implement. And in this case, you see a significant reduction in the emission savings because mainly the heat recovery that was implemented in this building, which resulted in reduction, significant reduction of natural gas. As you remember, going back to comparison here under the energy tab, we reduced the energy consumption. Again, in Ottawa is from 74, in Toronto was 63,000 cubic meters. In Ottawa, we reduced the energy consumption from 74,000 cubic meters to 13,000 cubic meters because we use heat recovery for space heating here. So the financial module, the last one that I'm going to very briefly present, I won't go here. It's based on a life cycle type of analysis. So we can add parameters that are related to potential financing, grants, incentives, interest for various share of the project cost that may be taken as a loan. And we can do that analysis for the project lifetime with results presented both as tabular form in numbers or in a graphical form here. So what we basically realize in this project is that we get the payback somewhere around 16.4 years. And if we want to see it more precisely here, we see it in a table above. So the equity payback is 16.4. So that would be for contribution of this project. Now, parameters are flexible. Any yellow field allows you to modify the input, so we can do various analyses. What if we do this with internal funds, so no debt? We can just delete the component that is associated with the debt ratio. And now the entire project is internally funded. We see the impact being presented both graphically and in numbers. So cash flow diagrams are also suggestive. We have a cost of implementing the project, and then over the lifetime of the project, we have inflows of cash, which are represented by the savings of energy in this project. So that was, at a glance, the second feature that I wanted to demonstrate, the archetypes. And yes, there are similar ones for various category of buildings, food services, restaurants, but also schools, office buildings, quite a large number of options in terms of selecting the building type. The last section of our presentation is addressing the portfolio analysis, where we take facilities, different facilities that we have in our portfolio, and we want to aggregate them so that we can analyze the performance, we can benchmark, we can analyze feasibility, and present the results for the entire portfolio rather than just by facility. So with the portfolio analysis, we can combine various facilities geographically spread apart by building type as well. We can analyze energy efficiency measures that were modeled by building. So we can have a comparison of window replacement in our grocery store in Ottawa versus window replacement in our grocery store in Toronto, and decide which one should be a higher priority. So we can do this type of analysis. My portfolio database is built based on any number of facilities, so it's scalable. So we can start with the most representative one if we want. We can start with one area in our portfolio and extend it. We can also organize portfolios in categories. We can build sub-portfolios inside the larger portfolio by region, by type, by size, by age. We can group them in various ways. And the beauty of all this is that all the information actually resides in each facility's file. So in this example, we have 4 facilities that we started our portfolio with. Each of them will have its own RETScreen file with the feasibility analysis of measures, with the data for bills, with performance analysis. But we can then aggregate them into a portfolio file, and we can extend as more facilities become available, or if we want to extend this analysis to more facilities in our larger portfolio. And it's important to also note here that these files can reside in various locations in our network. As long as we link them, larger organizations with facilities across the country may decide to keep files in different locations. That's not a problem as long as you have access to those files through the internal network or shared folders or cloud locations. We can build our portfolio file that gets always updated with the most recent information of each of these facilities. A nice feature, again, in portfolio is the mapping tool. We can present facilities on the map as shown here across North America. And we can show them also by category, depending on what use that facility has, as we see in this chart here. All this analysis is done under a dashboard. The dashboard allows us to perform 3 types of analysis: benchmarking, comparing those facilities amongst themselves or with other references; feasibility analysis, if I want to see my refrigeration plant upgrade in the store in Ottawa versus the refrigeration plant upgrade in the store in Vancouver, for example. That's going to be part of feasibility analysis. And finally, we do a performance analysis if we want to monitor the performance of a project implemented in one facility versus other one, or in the same facility along the time, across a longer period of time. So yes, all these can be done by store, but we can also group them and do this analysis by groups for the entire portfolio or for sub-portfolios as we define them. And this analysis of consolidated results can be done by end use of energy, by aggregated energy. For instance, we look at equivalent kilowatt hours as a typical unit of use in our buildings, so that we can calculate an equivalent kilowatt hour of energy used per square meter or per square foot. We can do this analysis for cost or for emissions as well, greenhouse gas emissions, and then again aggregated from the facility level to group level or to entire portfolio, and use those key performance indicators, the report, the key metrics that we identify, use them for reporting. Just as an example here, and I'll show you more in the RETScreen file. Just as an example here, we see a screenshot of performance analysis in a portfolio of buildings. This is one of the portfolio files that is available again in RETScreen. It shows a number of facilities from NRCan, and it analyzes the performance of these facilities along a period of time starting in 2005-2006 fiscal year. That's another feature that portfolio allows us to define the year. Not all facilities will go with a calendar year, so we can define specific fiscal years if you want to report based on that time frame. So from 2005 and 6 all the way to 2022-23. So that's shown here, and you can see as a bar chart the contribution of each of these facilities to the total consumption. And we can also see that overall, based on the entire portfolio included in this file, we can see the trend of energy consumption over this period of time. Now, the newest tool, and it's associated with the portfolio analysis, is the decarbonization framework under the net zero planning tool. So we can, based on the analysis of the building, we can now develop a plan, which many organizations are looking for, a plan to address emissions on a different horizon. We can set emissions with a target for 2030 or with 2050. We can set that and see what it takes to get to that point. And in this chart, we are seeing that using a reference set in our file, then comparing the baseline, which is the starting point in our analysis, baseline being the year where we develop the plan, and a reference being what would be the reference that we use for our reduction in emissions, and identifying then opportunities. And we see a variety of measures that stack on top of each other to address the reductions, to the point where the last one here will bring the emissions to zero. So the end goal here would be to get to zero, as shown in this example here. So a waterfall chart will show step by step how we can actually get to where we want to get there, the target. And the decarbonization portfolio is basically put together as a methodology. In this chart, we show the 10 steps. So identify the reference. This is basically what we use as a reference to report our performance in reduction of energy savings. We define the baseline. This is the starting point. And then we look at the various options we have in reducing the emissions. We can rely on a cleaner grid. This is something that authorities are expecting, to clean electricity grids, having better technologies and less emissions associated with the electricity we use, which means that in many facilities, by electrifying the end use consumption, we can achieve overall emission reduction. We can look at optimization of our resources, disposed facilities. We can look at energy efficiency measures. I mentioned electrification that results in emission reduction because of the cleaner electricity grid. And consistent with my first comment about conservation before generation, once we implement all those measures, we can look at generation on site. So on-site renewables would be the first choice. We can also look at off-site renewables. Some organizations may have potential for generating more electricity at one site, but then combine various sites together, net, you reach the target. And as a last resort, we have carbon offsets, basically compensating for that last, 10% or whatever is left over in our emissions that it's very difficult to reduce. We use carbon offsets to bring us to net zero. And all this is done on the same idea of being able to generate reports so that we can monitor progress and share these results in reports to various stakeholders of the project. So that takes us to the last demonstration, which is going to be through a portfolio file. And let me go to RETScreen. So I have actually two portfolio files that I'm going to share with you. So one is a portfolio file that we created very quickly using the archetypes for the food, retail, and services sector. So we have three archetypes that are available in RETScreen. One would be for food retail, a supermarket, grocery store, and then two archetypes in food services, one for a full service restaurant and one for quick service restaurant. So we created 4 of each of these archetypes by just changing the location. So these 4 stores are based on the same archetype, just changing the location. So Halifax, Toronto, Vancouver, Winnipeg are the 4 locations. You may notice here that one of the files, the one in Toronto, I have it open on my computer, is the file that I showed you for the feasibility analysis for the grocery store. So that's how RETScreen portfolio will tell me that the file is open and I need to sync it with a portfolio file when I'm done with it and I close it. So that's because the data is not stored in the portfolio file, the data is stored in the original file. The other three files are synced, so I'm okay with the data from those three stores. We can organize this by category, so I have grouping under food retail, we have grouping under food services, and in food services we created two subgroups. So organization of your facilities in various clusters is extremely easy. We can also organize by geography. So Halifax, we have 3 facilities, Toronto, Vancouver, and Winnipeg. And what we've done very quickly with these archetypes, we created a net zero plan. So that will allow us to generate a plan based on what we have in the store and what needs to be done to get to net zero. So we can use the template to generate these net zero plans, or in our case, we already have it. So I'm going to jump to the results here. So I can look at a quick feasibility analysis comparing these projects amongst themselves. As part of the feasibility analysis, I'm looking at the net present value of the projects. Because they are based on the same archetypes, the type of measures are very similar. So you will see these numbers very close to each other. But what is more important that I want to show here is that based on the measures identified in this building, as we build our emission reduction plan, we already identified a number of measures that result in a significant reduction of CO2 emissions. And this is coming from the energy efficiency measures identifying these archetypes. Remember that significant reduction in natural gas consumption because we use heat recovery. We also have on-site renewables. In this case, we only have it for one store. We activated that measure for one store. The other ones are not included. And you can see it here that we do first the emission reduction by implementing energy efficiency measures. Then we implement reduction of emissions through renewable energy. And then we have, for the balance to our target, we have carbon offsets. And in this case, the balance is to, if I format this here, the balance was to a target of 90%. So for this example, we set a target of emission reduction to 90%. And that tells us that after we implement the energy conservation projects and after we implement the on-site generation, we need to purchase carbon offsets in the amount of 932 tons of CO2 in order to reach our 10% target. So that's the example that we built very quickly on using the archetypes. If you want to practice again with RETScreen, you have a variety of portfolios that are available in RETScreen. This one here is a portfolio that the RETScreen team developed to exemplify a net zero plan, which is based on a portfolio of buildings with various usages and with various implementation of energy efficiency measures identified in the archetypes. So all these are actually archetypes that were used here. So if we go to the plan, what we see in this example is that we have a combination of a number of measures. Cleaner electricity, meaning we anticipate a reduction in an emission factor associated with the grid. We have energy efficiency measures. We have electrification of heating. We have on-site renewables and off-site renewables. And what we are left here is offset purchase of carbon credits for 1,104 tons to bring us to net zero. So whenever we create this net zero plan using the default template inside RETScreen, the target will be set to net zero. It's basically where we want to get. If you want to set a different one, you can just customize and create a waterfall analysis that it's flexible in setting the target for your analysis. And with that, we basically covered all features. I'm going to go back to my presentation, but I'll have the files open because I like to allow for maybe we have 7 minutes, maybe a bit more than 7 minutes if required, of questions, comments, and discussions. Please feel free to post it in the chat box or raise your hand, enable your microphone, and ask the question. Kevin, go ahead.
Hi, Dragos. Thanks very much. That was an excellent overview. You somehow managed to fit in that time so much content. So that's really good. Thank you. I wanted to just remind folks on the line here that I think you conveyed just the breadth, the variety of things that RETScreen can do, but also the different ways that you can start using it if you're not already. So you can start tracking those utility bills. You can start with that net zero plan. You can start with the archetypes for an energy audit. And it doesn't need to stop there either, right? So often we will start with an archetype and then hide that part away and then load up energy consumption information, electricity. So both of them are there. And that's useful because when you then say, well, what should I do next? Or like you had that project with the oven, you'll want to calibrate that. And the easiest way to calibrate that is with your utility data. And you've loaded it. It's all in the same file. And so, yeah, I just want to remind people that there's multiple dimensions, if you will, here. And that they're meant to start quickly and easily, and then you move on with the level of detail as your project goes on. One of sort of the philosophies behind sort of RETScreen is don't start with an hourly simulation that requires all sorts of setup when you're just trying to figure out, does this project make sense? What were my savings last year? You can move into that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that we do have a software key that's available to people, and they can just contact us to get that. And we'd be happy here at RETScreen at NRCan to help you out and answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. I also, in addition to that, I want to mention that the RETScreen platform is available for free. You can download it, install it in viewer mode. The key that Kevin mentioned will give you full access to features. The main difference between the viewer mode and the full feature access is you are able to save your work. So if you plan to play around, practice, test this software, yes, feel free to send an email to the RETScreen team and they will share the key with you. I see a question in the chat box. Thank you, Mishu. So is RETScreen a tool to use for single-family residential units for savings opportunities? And it's definitely an excellent tool there. There is an archetype for various, actually more than one archetype for residential buildings. Single-family residential units, yes. Detached homes, you can find the archetype there. again, remember, this is not your house, it's someone else's house, but it is a true project, and you can use it for inspiration. Okay, everyone, I don't see any other questions. Sorry, I see a hand up.
Hey, Dragos, it's Matt.
Hey, Matt, go ahead.
This is a little more detailed than what you got into today with this. So but I got questions about how to effectively use the scaling tool on the archetypes. I played around with it a little bit, and I just don't really fully understand it. So if you're up to tackle that, I'd love to hear about it.
And I assume this question you are having here, Matt, is because you used the archetype before when the scaling was happening in the calculation of energy consumption as well.
Yeah, like I'm in the process of setting up the models for our buildings. And when I have industrial buildings, so the scaling is like my archetypes. I use the archetype as a base, and then I scale up and down accordingly. But I'm curious if the scaling feature also scales the archetype.
Right, and it does not, as far as I can see, in the actual end use calculations. It does, though, allow you to scale the summary results.
Okay, so that's how that tool effectively works in RETScreen. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, it used to be the way you mentioned it before, that the end uses were scalable, but I believe because it's not easy to scale a facility, because remember, the archetypes are based on actual building. So
Yeah.
it's not everything is linear. So scaling up or down probably wasn't that easy. And I assume reason behind this new scaling feature is just to avoid the misinterpretation of significant scaling up or down.
Right. So I guess that's put that on your plate there, Kevin.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Yeah. Dragos is absolutely right. And yes, because every building is different, because every geometry of the building is different, and especially because of all the internal loads are different.
Yeah.
There really is a very limited way of taking sort of a template, which is what an archetype is. An archetype is a super duper kind of smart template, and scaling that up. We know from just just physics and sort of general sort of what they call scaling laws, that as a building sort of footprint doubles in size, its energy consumption does not double in size. It's usually about 70 to 80%, and so there's savings there. And so like Drago said, while the archetypes represent an archetypical building, right? That we know that they don't represent your specific building.
Yeah.
And so if you're looking for a specific building to get a first pass at what the energy consumption is and lining that up with what it is from your utility bills, you use a scaling tool there. But if you're looking to actually say, well, no, my walls aren't 50 square meters, it's 80 square meters, the scaling tool won't do that. And I don't know that there is a way to actually do that. But think of it this way as well. If you have a portfolio of, say, 100 facilities, or we work with our Department of National Defense, so 10,000 facilities, there's no way that we're going to be able to, in a reasonable time, get the accurate kind of energy consumption of those facilities based on archetypes.
Right.
But we know if we load up the archetypes and then scale them, we can get really close in the aggregate. And so that's another place to use scaling. So the workflow would be like this: load an archetype, scale it up, and then go into it and then adjust the particulars of the archetype to match your facility. So it's sort of a multiple stage process, but
when you say
over time.
scale it up, where do you do that portion?
Using the scale, sorry, what I mean is the scaling tool. So the scaling tool will take, as Drago said, the overall end use consumptions for each of the electricities or fuels in there, and scale them up according to the exponent factor that you've put in. And the ratio between the sizes of the facilities.
Okay.
But then in this third step where you actually want to go and say, no, I don't have 2 motors, I have 3, or I don't have an elevator, I have 2 elevators, you have to actually go into the file.
Okay. That helps. That definitely helps and points me kind of, like, it's all about using the tool correctly, right? So
Yes,
yes, I thank you both. And I've been on many of these webinars and I learn something every time. So that's why I keep joining.
It's great. It's great. Matt, and same as you, I learn something new every time I hear a seminar as well, because each user may have a different methodology to implement.
Yeah.
I see a comment or a question in the box, in the chat box by Grace. Grace, yes, you can just email. Maybe I don't have it handy, Kevin. If you can post the general email address from RETScreen team, where participants can request for the 30-day. There you go. Thank you, Kevin. So Grace, you can just email the RETScreen team and they will issue a key for 30 days. Okay, one last call. I don't see any questions in the chat box and I don't see any hands up. So thank you, everyone. I hope you will have a chance to practice a bit more with RETScreen or find ways to use it in your work. I can share from my experience, it makes our life easier, and many of the people I know in the industry are using it on a daily basis for various energy management initiatives. So that being said, I will close the recording for the webinar now, and I'll remain on the line just in case anyone has one last minute question.